Saurabh Mishra, one of the sharpest advertising brains. And in this, apart from this troika, we have somebody who's a hardcore suit, Sandeep Sikka, my friend, and head of the largest mutual fund and Amphi also. Please welcome all of you. Monica Hallan was supposed to moderate this session. She's unwell, so Prem Khatri will be doing the honors.
Okay, guys, good afternoon to all of you once again, and I hope you're having a good time here today. Rajiv is always very articulate, Rajiv Bajaj. So he gave me the cue to open up this session. He said that investor awareness is going to be the game changer. Okay, so let me use that. I borrowed that phrase from you, Rajiv. Thanks so much. And as we all know, the 2 BIPs which the mutual fund industry has to spend on these activities. This thing, I think, took the industry by a little bit of surprise, though there was investor awareness activities going before SEBI had mandated it. But people really started thinking about it much more seriously because there's serious money on the table. Also, the industry realized that this could help them expand the category substantially, and that is why we are talking about it today. So without much ado, I get straight into the meat of our discussion. I'll begin with Sandeep. Sandeep, you head the Investor Awareness Committee, AMFI. Now, is it an investor awareness budget or is it a mutual fund awareness budget? And I'll tell you why. When I met Saurabh, when I wanted to call Saurabh and invite him for this thing, our discussion was, he was talking about mutual funds and I was talking about investor awareness. So there I realized there's some sort of this thing. So if the investor awareness for insurance company is selling insurance or is it creating investor awareness? Are we talking about broad personal finance issues or are we talking about the product?
Thanks, Prem. Firstly, thanks for getting a great panel. You've got all the creative.
Go here.
No, I think I missed all the creative guys, and I think what you have done is very interesting. I have tried to get a lot of creative guys in the mutual fund industry, never been able to get them because they believe they can't be creative in this industry because of the various regulatory or various other reasons. So good, you got a great panel, that is first. Secondly, I clearly look to be out, the strange man out. Everybody, you can see the guys dressed differently. I'm a little more formal, so I'll have to take care of what I talk from a regulatory point of view also. So let me start with firstly, I think somehow this 2 basis point investor education, all this has been talked about a lot more now, post November last year, ever since this SEBI started this 2 basis point. But let me step back a little. I think firstly, let me highlight the fact. Let me take your question head on. Is this an issue of mutual fund awareness? Is it an issue of investor education? I think there's a bigger issue. Let me first get the facts in place. As a country today, there's a need for financial literacy, and financial literacy is very different from mutual fund only. There is a need, when we talk of financial literacy, it means taking informed decisions about how to borrow, where to invest, how do you plan for future? All these are a part of it. A country like India, where we have the largest, we have the highest saving rates, I think people do not differentiate between savings and investments. Another big thing which is very important is India has high literacy rates, but I think our experience shows that literate people, some of the very educated people are financially illiterate. And for this, I think there's a bigger thing, so it's not about insurance, it's not about mutual fund. The financial literacy in the country has to go up. And mutual fund education awareness is a part of it. Now coming to the mutual fund industry, which I represent, irrespective of this 2 basis point, I'll just like to highlight, the industry has been doing a lot on investor education and awareness, and I'll try to see these 2 things differently. Awareness is about getting new people to the industry. Education is, there are people in the industry who are not educated or do not understand this product. And both these need to be addressed independently. From our point of view, if I was to see, this industry has been, it's a young industry. It's an industry where a lot of whatever you talk, whatever you communicate with the investor is highly regulated. And this industry has been somehow, I mean, like I said, it's just 8-10 years old for all practical reasons, has been very inward looking. I won't, I'll take it head on. A lot of things that we have communicated to the investor have been what he does not understand. What I mean by that? All our products, basically, of the industry are addressed as, whether it's a mid-cap fund, opportunity fund, dividend yield fund. These names are very good for all the stakeholders in the industry, whether it's a manufacturer or the distributor to understand. But what does the investor understand when you talk to him about a volatility fund, arbitrage fund, you talk about dividend yield fund? Here's a guy who does not know about mutual funds, and this is what we were talking. So there is a need, and I think today industry is, I think we'll have to all understand, and I'm just taking a cue from your earlier session also, I think which Gautam guided it very well, that for all of us we'll have to understand who's the end consumer. The end consumer is the investor, and all stakeholders have to talk the language that he understands. And are we doing that? Till now, we were, but not that much. I think we'll have to change gears, and investor education and awareness will have to be, is going to be all about talking what he wants to hear, what he understands. Let me, go back to one of the, I'm just take this example. When mutual funds were set up in India, it was set up with UTI, and all the scheme names used to be about education of child, about marriage, about the names of the schemes are very different. They never talked about dividend yield opportunity. My sense is, I think awareness and education are two things which need to be addressed, and we'll have to use a lot of creativity, which till now has been constrained. And let me also, take it head on, which has been constrained because of the regulatory reasons of what you can communicate to the investor. So today, there could be a fund which has created wealth over 15 years time, but what you try to communicate to the investor is made a return of 23% CAGR. And I can vouch for it if you were to see how many people understand CAGR. But if you were to say 1 lakh invested over 15 years has become 50 lakh rupees, that is what the investor wants to hear. So my sense is investor education and awareness needs to be seen very differently. And as industry, we are trying to do a lot through AMFI, dealing with, closely working with SEBI, how to make this communication simple.
Oh, great. Bobby, we're talking about creativity, and who could be better than you to answer some of these things? What are the things that you need, what are the good principles to be kept in mind when you're trying to bring about a change in people's attitude and their behavior?
I think the first thing you've got to look at is what do you want to achieve, right? I mean, if you take investor education, it means you want to educate. Those two very terms, you want to educate people who are currently investing, right? That's an easier task because they're already engaged. They're listening. You can send them books, right? But looking at just the penetration of mutual funds in this country, right? The one thing that is apparent to us all is that there are a whole bunch of people out there who are not at all aware and therefore not interested. So therefore your job is not investor education, it's investor creation, right? And how do you create investors? By arming them with knowledge. Therefore, you have to be like, you have to think not like a mutual fund house or a mutual fund industry, but think like an educator, right? And you have to kind of teach people, like if you're a physics teacher in a 9th standard class, right, where most of the kids are not terribly into physics, how would you teach them? Okay, you'd make the lesson relevant to those people. First of all, before you even start educating, you've got to ask yourself, who do you want to educate, right? You start by educating the people who are most willing to learn. If you start by people like me who are in their mid-40s, well, we've had 25, 30 years of prejudice built against, right, for or against certain kinds of investments. It's really hard for anybody to move us off our positions. But there's young India that's emerging, right, that has money and also has huge ambitions, not just career ambitions, huge financial ambitions, right? They are easier to teach because the greed and the ambitions there, right? And they want to sort of become CEOs faster, get their BMWs faster. So maybe those are the people you want to reach out to and educate. Also, let me tell you one thing. If you think advertising is going to educate people, all your money is down the drain. That'd be the worst investment you make, right? I saw the Birla Mutual, the thing. I know Ajay Kakar really well, and he's not going to like me for saying this. A little bit he may not like me, right? That is, as you're saying, hey, like a restaurant, it takes a long time to make good food, and therefore it's like mutual fund. In 30 seconds, what have you said? You just try to make a point nobody's interested in, right? I think to do that, you need to be on ground. You need to be in colleges, right? Because you have to create a whole generation of investors. It's got to happen one-on-one, face-to-face, right? Advertising can help you recruit people to that cause or lead people there, right? Make them aware of that. But a lot of this, if you think it's going to be as easy as, hey, let me do a bunch of ads and get an agency and then reject 20 of their concepts and pick maybe the 21st and then murder it, it ain't going to happen, right? A lot of it's going to be sort of a well-coordinated program. Like you put together a syllabus, that's exactly what you got to do. You got to think like an educator. And it is going to come from a united thing. Not 20 people doing 20 different things. I don't think it's going to work as well as one body following one plan, right? The other part of it is that, once you educated some people, you've got to arm them. See, something like investments, buying houses and all that, buying a car. What happens is, once I've bought into a brand or something, or an ideology, right, I go infect other people. So the educated, I've got to empower them to infect other people. So how do you give them the tools, right, to go spread the message? I think also understand one thing, if you do this for yourself, you're going to fail, right? You've got to find the biggest positive impact you can have on people's lives, okay? This has to be a mutually beneficial thing, right? You will benefit because the business, the pie grows. But why should anybody else be interested in this? They should be interested in this because otherwise they are missing out on sharing the prosperity that this country is experiencing in fits and starts. I mean, hopefully the government gets that together. I shouldn't say these things, but whatever. Yeah, it's bound to change. But yeah, that's kind of the beginning of it. I think.
Bobby, you made 2 points that I kind of like to probe further. One of them I'd like to probe with you, Sandeep. Sandeep, you had this committee, right? Now, one of the things that Bobby is trying to say is that you should do it collectively. What are your views? Because right now we are a little confused as to whether this should be an industry-wide initiative or should it be left to the individual players to do whatever they like. When it is left to individual players, the point is if someone's making a point about debt funds, the other one's making a point about something else, it's perhaps spread a little too thin. Okay? So your views on that?
First, let me start by the fact that investor education is a journey. It's a long journey. So much needs to be done that whatever is being done right now is also less. So what we need to do is both collectively and individually. So I think at this point of time we should not complain of anyone doing individually or collectively. But let me just give you a perspective of what we've been trying to do collectively. AMFI has been conducting on-ground training camps to educate investors. We are doing more than 10,000 camps per annum, which makes this initiative as the largest education initiative in the financial sector. So this entire initiative is voluntarily and is a collective effort of the mutual fund industry through AMFI. Similarly, there's another initiative. What we have done is adoption of districts. Now that again is a voluntary exercise, but the main point I'm trying to make here is that there's so much needs to be done, and I personally believe the industry body will have to do, and individually also everybody will have to do. So, and there's a lot of work that is happening collectively. So not only it's the AMFI, it's also there's a lot of things that are being done along with SEBI. You will see recently a mutual fund education campaign which SEBI will be starting. There is a lot more being done which you'll come to know, which is going to be in, we are trying to go to schools and colleges and trying to educate about mutual funds. So I'd just like to highlight the fact, while I think I'm 100% of the view that everything can be centralized, but there is a merit that both collective as well as individual, if we do it, that is what is required, because let me be very candid, there's so much to be done in this country where 2% of the population is investing in mutual funds. I think right now let's not worry about who's doing what. Let's worry who's not doing anything.
Okay, great. Now, what media do we use? Bobby seemed to be implying that mass media may not be the cure all the time. Mass media advertising may not be the cure all the time. How would you react? You want to create impact, and advertising is ruled out. Then how do you reach the right number of people, and how do you make sure that the engagement is meaningful?
So first of all, there's a lot of, can you hear me? Through the mic? Okay. There's a lot of truth and universality in what Bobby said and what Sandeep said. I don't want to repeat what they said, but I'm really excited with the import of what both of them are saying. In my mind, real education never happens through either advertising or some centralized education authority that are trying to educate us, right? All of us know, whoever is in a family, that real education happens in the families. Not even school, not college, not university. So in the case of mutual funds, so is that the advisor who's educating? Is that the investor camps which is educating? I'm a firm believer that education, if you just look at the role of education as awareness, it's a failure, right? Real education never only makes you aware. So I take a step back, and I just asked him offline whether there was anybody from SEBI in this room, because then I might have to moderate my comment, but I'm told there is none, so I can be free, right? I sort of go back a step and saying, what is the real role of a regulator in any sector, and what is the role of regulator particularly with education, right, of the customers, because in this case the customers ideally should be the people who have put in the money, right? So I was asking before we came onto the stage, we were just discussing, and I realized that if you ignore UTI, the first mutual fund in this country was launched in, I believe, 94, or 93 or 94.
84. Okay.
93
Private
94.
sector, 93. Okay.
Yeah, if you ignore UTI. Now, if you think of another sector that actually launched a year after that, which is the telephony sector, again, there was a big legacy company which existed, the UTI equivalent, but now we know where that sector is and how people have adopted that product and the service with so much enthusiasm. Did TRI have to educate people about how to use a mobile phone? Right? Individual companies who have their profit motive, who needed people to embrace the telephony and all the things that went with the device and the service with enthusiasm, did the work, right? Now, I can't really compare the two because the role of regulation in the two industries are very, very different. Like Sandeep said, for example, SEBI mandates you can't say a lot of things that usually other companies can say, other industries and can get away with. Right? So I would say, come back here, so the role of regulator needs to be defined beyond mandating that people should educate. I get that part. The regulator is concerned that investors should be made aware, they should be given knowledge, they should be educated, all that is fine. But if we don't define what is education, how are we going to measure at the end of 1 year and spending 150 crore, next year another 150 crore, in 5 years you would have spent like 1,000 crores. How do you know whether investors really got educated or not? How do you know they got awareness? Awareness means what? Do you know of mutual fund? Is that awareness? Right? I guess if you have that kind of a rudimentary measure, then you can be very happy that I educate a lot of people.
What do you
But
suggest it should be?
in my view, if you think of actionable knowledge,
Yeah.
right? It's not about that Sri Lanka lies to the south of India. That is knowledge. What do I do about it? So what is the real, I would say, outcome metrics? The industry, whether it is SEBI or AMFI, is setting that we spend X rupees, right? What should happen for you, for us to know people have become slightly better than because of our input, right? So to me, actionable knowledge. And there are ways of finding actionable knowledge and measuring it. It's not rocket science. The advertising industry and FMCG companies, consumer package companies have been measuring that for years and years and years. It's not impossible, right? I do something, something happens, and then something happens. So for example, you talk about increasing the pie. Does it mean number of new customers entering, the sector? When you open, you talk about financial literacy beyond just mutual funds. Are there more people willing to take away 1%, 2%, whatever of their savings money and putting into other potentially high risk, high yield, or higher risk, higher yield opportunities? If you don't know how to measure all that, or we know, but if you don't think of measuring all that, I think we'll remain in this very vague investor education, investor awareness. Is almost like we're telling people about Ramayana and Mahabharata, not really knowing what they are supposed to do about it, right? To go back directly to your question, should it be mass media or non-mass media? I think any guy who's ever been in media and advertising will tell you there is no either or. You need the right mix. So the 10,000 investor camps are required, and then we need to measure what happened to those 10,000 into, let's say, 20 people come, that's 2 lakh people touched in a year. What happened to them? Do they then, these 2 lakh people then go and get a chance to watch TV or, type on YouTube? Do they get a chance to receive, the investor newsletter I get from one of my mutual funds every month and what it does to them? I don't think we can look at that as, one guy, either you do ground or you do mass media. Right? Having said that, I think to Bobby's point, and emphatically so, if you only mostly do what is called air cover, 150 crores, either in newspapers or magazines, because those are the easier parts. I'm sure Sandeep will agree that I don't know how much money you spend in 10,000 investor camps, 10,000 is, right? If you spend the same money on television, you'll run out in 1 week.
Yeah.
So it's easier, right? Yeah. This is much more difficult. Yeah. For example, schools. There's a company from Chennai which approached me about 15 days ago that's trying to create financial literacy in schools through the medium of comic books and cartoons. And they've already signed up a few schools. Now, who is going to tell schools, SEBI can't, that we expect you to be responsible for the financial literacy of the next 2 generations of investors? Or do we only go to those people who are either got their money locked away in gold or FD or stocks and to say that, oh, now you come to mutual funds? I think the question is slightly broader and deeper. We have to go to where different smaller segments of people are, employees in companies. Who's running camps? Is the companies who should be running, and they could be facilitated. Schools, colleges, right? And all these investor camps, they're all useful, but I think to me, the most important thing is to have the metric in place. What are we going to measure?
Okay, great.
Can I just build on what Ravi is saying? So there's some interesting thing. I think before, like Ravi is saying, you have to be first decide what the outcome you want is, right? And the output that you put into it, right, to achieving that outcome will be decided by what that outcome is, right? So amongst the first thing, if you want a generation of investors that is literate, I think you got to decide first who it is who's most willing to learn, right? And then put all your efforts against those people rather than say go for reach, which is say I have touched whatever, 20 crore people. But if 19 of those 20 crores were indifferent to what you're saying, well, you only touched 1 crore people. So I think if you're more focused right at the beginning, you're going to have greater results. Also, it's stuff like, what, sometimes the most unexpected ways of coming at something will give you the most results. If you want to educate, well, there's an entire education industry that's out there. You might have more success making, let's say, not now, not in the near term, but in, let's say, 15 years, right, 10 years, whatever, of having financial literacy as part of the curriculum in junior colleges and colleges than you do in a lot of other activities, right? Even sending, let's say, some investor weekly or whatever. Because then you'll create a class of, a generation of people who are more aware. Sorry to butt in.
Yeah, just to add one line. So the world I come from, although I'm no longer in advertising, so technically I'm not creative. But having said, I work a lot with entrepreneurs, but having said that, the world I come from, we used to have one line that is to define the way we did our everyday work. We used to say, what gets inspected gets respected. My question is, what is this industry inspecting? And that is the metric. If you generally say, oh, let's put some money so that people can get educated, I mean, sooner or later you'll have to wonder whether the money, and whose money is it anyway? Remember, it came out of those 20, 30 million people or 20, 30 lakh people who have already invested in, in the mutual funds. Ultimately, it's their money, right?
No. It is something which is coming straight out of the pockets of the industry. This is something.
The money finally comes from an individual.
No.
It does not come from the pocket of anyone.
It cannot. Anyway, we'll not get into that. Saurabh, Bobby made a point about focus. Now, there are two things. When you're talking about focus, you could have a focused audience. You could be focused on a particular group. The other thing is, what is the message that you're trying to get? Unlike, let's say, other public service advertising, such as, say, related to polio, Do Boond, which is very single-minded, very focused. Here we have a plethora of messages, each one being interpreted differently by each fund house and each stakeholder. Okay, what would you say about that? So how do you address this thing where you're dealing with a lot of issues?
A lot of audiences.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my area of expertise is slightly different from Ravi's and Sandeep's. I come from the understanding of what the consumer is all about. Okay, my area of expertise is understanding who's that person that you're finally trying to build a relationship with. And about 30, 40 years back, one of our clients, Bobby will remember, very respected clients, had something to say in the FMCG category. It's fast-moving consumer goods. And I think the learnings today revisit us. As that industry has evolved and this industry is evolving, the Shunu said, he used to say that the Indian housewife, as the astute consumer that she is, she may not know the price of everything, but trust me, she knows the value of everything that you're trying to sell her. Okay, and I think somewhere one of the things that I keep hearing from all of you experts over here is that the Indian consumer is financially fairly astute or savvy, but maybe they are not very literate in terms of the technical stuff that we are trying to sell them. And I think somewhere the connection that we have to make is trying to figure out the value that they seek in their life. And what is the role, therefore, that mutual funds can play in her life. I'm deliberately keeping it as a her, like, it's no particular this thing, but you got to, take it down to the housewife's level. What is the role that something like our product will play in her life? Now, this brings me to the second part of what you're talking about, which is the different audiences and the different objectives that you set for yourself. Now, see, quite honestly, I think people like Bobby and me, we are in the how part of the business. Okay, people like Rajiv, people like Sandeep are the people who strategically tell us that we have taken a call as the industry that this is what we want to do. Okay, so what I'm urging you to do is probably look at this investor very, very carefully. Look at your audience very carefully and define it sharply. If you don't get into a sharp definition of the audience, who are you talking to? Okay, I was just having this chat about investor education. Say, I'm an investor. I've been an investor for many years. I mean, I don't understand it very well. Like most of us from our business, we don't understand. And I was telling him that, my driver who's driven me over here, he's an investor too. Okay, and with 500 rupees being your basic requirement for SIP, I think he's your audience too. I think the number of those people are quite huge. But the way you connect to him, coming back to my first point, and the value that you create for him, the role that you can play in his life, might be slightly different from the role that you play in my life. So what I'm urging you to do is the industry is to sharply define that what is it that you want to do? Who do you want to talk to? Because once you define that, it's easy for me to then come and create relevant stories over there. Now that brings me to the third point in terms of what you're talking about, building from what Ravi was speaking about. This entire thing about metrics, very important. You have to constantly measure. Otherwise money always wasted. Who was it, Lord Leverhulme, who said that, half of all my advertising money is wasted I just wish I knew which half. I think all of you know that. So I think we'll always deal with that. We have no clue which money is being wasted right now over here because we're not defining those metrics very carefully. Now the thing is, building from what Ravi is talking about, the first thing that we take is awareness. Okay, after that, where we take the consumer is to relevance. Knowledge. Have you heard of mutual fund? Yes, I have. And from the research that Prem was sharing with me, or the Cafemutual research that they have done, it's like quite often when you ask them in tier 2 cities that have you heard of mutual fund? Yes, we have. And what do you think is mutual fund? They confuse it even with things like bank fixed deposits. Wahi hota hai na? Okay, but so there's awareness, but there's no knowledge. Then you take them to the second level, that's knowledge. Then after those people who know, you take them to the third level, that's creating relevance in their life. And once you have created relevance, is when what Ravi is talking about, as our media partner quite often used to drive us very hard on this, that what's the actionability that is coming out of the money that I'm putting into advertising. So we got to be very careful, and what I'm urging you to do is to define your strategic focus very clearly. That are we going to be talking to those people at the bottom who are not aware, making them aware? Are we going to be taking a certain audience to the next level that's creating knowledge? Or are we going to create relevance? Because till the time we can focus our efforts, it will be all over the place.
Okay.
Does that
I
sort of
come
answer?
to two actionable I want to ask two action-oriented questions. One, there are a lot of distributors here, large and small. How do they use investor awareness as a tool to get new clients? Expand. How do they? Ravi, any ideas? How do they get?
Do they currently use or can they?
Can they? There are large distributors here, there are small distributors here.
By distributor,
How do
you mean banks and IFAs?
Banks and IFAs, absolutely, bang on.
So I know I'll probably end up upsetting a lot of people here. I have 2 or 3 bank executives who help me with my decisions, regardless of what they are. I think the one thing that I have always seen working for them in convincing me to take any action is to be honest.
Okay.
I just feel that right or wrong, there's a lot of negativity around IFAs, particularly IFAs, maybe sometimes banks as well. Right? I think many of them are accused of being salesmen while they are wearing a tag called advisor.
Okay.
Right? A real advisor, regardless of tools, his best tool is honesty, right?
Okay.
So if you think something will not work, and I've seen, for example, senior citizens, 70, 75-year-old people being when I was sitting in the bank listening to the advisor on my case, being offered products which even to my modest, innocent mind looked wrong. And so how do you do that? So I think that is one part of the tool in a philosophical level, that how do you use honesty as a tool and recommend only what is required, regardless of whether it will make money for you that day or not, right?
No, my question
I know.
was
I think
not
your
about
question is more on the tangible tools.
Yeah, I'm talking about is how do you use that to grow your business? Rajiv wants to find out. He's got plenty of offices all over the country.
Right.
He's got a lot of smart people. He wants to undertake investor awareness,
Right.
and he wants to say, look,
So-
I want to convert these
Yeah,
clients
so I have
to
a
me.
couple of thoughts
Yeah.
there. And again, I'm saying this from as much from a investor's point of view, customer's point of view, as from a media practitioner's point of view. I think a lot of things that are thrown at me by both IFAs as well as banks is all full of jargon. And I think we mentioned that sometime before, that when we use heavy words like, dividend yield and growth and IRR or CAGR and long-term stability, it just confuses the hell out of the guy, right?
Okay.
So I think we need to simplify.
Okay.
Now, whether we simplify through something as simple as illustrations and cartoons and comics, which may not work for everyone,
Yeah.
or we simplify through video,
Okay.
right? I think we need to think about how do you use simple tools to explain what the product does rather than what the product is. I think a good part of the industry is too obsessed with what the product is, right? So this is so it's like we are sitting in an assembly line and we're trying to sell a car. You can't sell a car sitting in an assembly line. You've got to get out on the road, describe the road and the joy of driving for somebody to sell the car. So I think, to me, simplification, good illustrations, simple tools like video, visuals. I don't know whether my friend Dharmendra is sitting here. 4 or 5 years ago, I came up on this beautiful thing I thought Tata Capital was doing with the creation of a character called Professor Simply Simple. And I know that other companies have attempted similar things as well. Now, at one level, you can say that that's all gimmick. But I do believe at another level, it just appeals to the human side of the investor. The investor is not really the regular investor we talk about. He's a human being, right? They think simple. They don't have a lot of time. There are many things in their life to worry about. If we throw jargon at them, and I think this is one of the most jargonized industries, probably next to IT. I don't know which one is more jargonized. Fortunately, IT guys don't have to sell to a lot of individuals. They sell to businesses. But here, when you have to sell to investors, you can't just mire yourself and surround yourself with very tough sounding jargons and make life difficult.
It's really interesting. Can I just add to that? So I find that really interesting. And one of the things in my business that we keep talking about is that actionability actually comes from emotion. Yeah? Whereas what rationality leads to is some sort of conclusion. So if you approach people rationally, if you give them the rationale of it, okay, that's what leads me to a conclusion. But if you want actionability happening, you have to bring in the element of emotionality to this entire thing. So as one of my ad gurus talks about it, he talks about, the matrix of love and respect. So respect is what rationality drives. So if I understand how the mutual fund industry is working, so that 23% CAGR over 15 years, 1 lakh becomes 50 lakhs or whatever that is, so that leads to respect. That leads to my rationally connecting with the message that you're telling me. But when you bring in the emotionality, and Bobby is the master of that, so when you bring in the emotionality of it, okay, that's when you start creating love. And when you start talking to emotions is when you start making, converting people to action. And that's where some very real human stories have to be spoken about.
The problem with that, I think Sandeep will bear me, I think the regulator.
Yes,
the regulator stops you from, if I'm not wrong, because I've handled at one point, my company has handled 6 mutual funds at the same time. You have to be factual, you have to have disclaimers, you cannot say things which are emotional, because to regulator, emotionality can mislead. And I think maybe you need to explore. I'm not saying everything that regulator does is bad, but what is the regulator's understanding of human emotions and communication? Where should regulators stop, and where can misleading start or not? And I think that's something
maybe
for
individual companies speaking to the regulator might make it difficult. Again, I'm opening it up for you. There's something else that we've been working on some time back. This is the General Insurance Council. The General Insurance Council is actually a body of all these general insurers coming together. Now, what we are trying to do over there is trying to create relevance for general insurance in the life of the ordinary consumer. Even stuff like crop insurance. It's not just about your motor insurance and high-end stuff, but even stuff like crop insurance, rural insurance. That's what we're trying to do. Now, it's far easier for a body like General Insurance Council coming together rather than the individual insurance companies to start pushing back with the regulatory guys. So I think that's something that I would urge Sandeep to speak on.
Sandeep, I want you to tell this audience, how can they use investor awareness as a tool to grow the business?
I think firstly, we are living in a world of instant noodles. Everything should happen fast. I think I want to just make it very clear that if somebody is thinking it's a big business opportunity to get instant results, and that's the reason you should be spending money on investor education. That is not the case. Investor education is a journey. What you're trying to do is you're trying to change the investor behavior. It might take generations to change that. I think I am a very strong believer. Comparison to FMCG, telecom cannot work in an industry like mutual fund because, and I am 100%, I think I agree with this, there are emotions in it. And what are these emotions? Let me step back a little. We've had generations of fathers, grandfathers investing our money in bank deposits, telling that investing in stock market is bad, investing anything where you're not getting a short return, you should stay away from that. It's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. So my message here is, anybody who's trying to do investor education thinking that end of 6 months or 12 months, his business will go up, please don't spend that money. It's a long drawn journey. It can take years and years for it. Secondly, I'll just like to, let's not forget, while other products, like again I'll go back to telecom and some other examples, sorry for using that, but there's an inherent need. A person understands what I'm going to get out of it. For mutual funds also, there is a need, but it is not filled. Everybody wants to create wealth, but it is not filled. And it's going to take, I mean, I am very clear in my mind, it's a long journey. Some people will come to this, in industry very soon. Some might take longer time, but it's a long run journey. It's like people, if you were to ask someone, and your survey, I read your survey, people feel that mutual fund industry at times is more riskier than even investing in livestock. It said that.
Yeah,
no, I think there's an education, number one, issue, but the bigger issue is, another study shows that only 40% of Indians have bank account. If he did not feel the need of a bank account, where is he going to come to mutual fund industry? So the telecom thing doesn't work. Secondly, 60% of Indians borrow money from unorganized sector. They go and borrow money from chit fund, various things. Today, if that investor is not educated to go to organized sector, why is he going to come to mutual fund? I think the big point I'm trying to make is, please don't expect short-term results. So anybody who's trying to invest in education, thinking that he's going to get results, what Ravi mentioned, that which half is going to give results? Sorry, you said that. But I'll say other way around. Nothing, you won't get any results. If it has been done with the intention to only increase business in next 12 months. It is something, it is a social thing. The polio drop campaign that we say, do boond and all the stuff, that has it given result overnight? Answer is a clear no. So we need to be very clear, and I'm very candid in this, because I think what happens is at times we start expecting the 2-minute noodle effect here, that everything will happen in 2 minutes. Nothing is going to happen in 2 minutes. So if you're serious about this industry, if you believe in this industry, you'll have to invest for long time, and only then the investor education will give results.
Okay, point well taken.
Just build on that. I think there's some great points you made. But let's start with one thing. You're talking about investor education, right? Maybe you start with yourself, right? You know finance really well. You don't know investors or consumers, right? Just as they don't know finance, you don't know them. First, understand them. You think you cannot. If you sit here and think that people are investing their money, you're wrong. They're investing their future, they're investing their hopes, their desires, all of that. They're investing their love, their dreams that they have. So you've got to understand that first. If you cannot relate to them, they will not relate to you, right? Now first, let's start there, and then reach out to them, right? Then engage with them. I think it happens when you talk to people as equals, right? When their dreams become your dreams. Do not sell a product, because what happens is, in a lot of mutual fund net, it is all about the product. Like, you are in love with that thing. The brands that succeed doing that are brands like Rolls-Royce, but they make high-end luxury things, really high-end. Now, when you're selling hopes and dreams, you got to fall in love, be in love with the consumer and what you mean, the positive impact you can have on their lives.
So I think since you mentioned about you selling dreams, and I 100% agree with you. You look at every real estate company builder, just on a piece of land, he sells you dream. Yeah. He can show you a great flat, great lifestyle, your swimming pool on the top floor, and he may not even have the BMC approvals. But here you have an industry where you have created wealth, but you're going to talk about it. So I think you're right. It's about emotions, it's about promises, it's about hopes, and also conveying it the right way.
Okay, and long term. Don't expect instant results. Gautam is scowling at me, so we'll have to call an end to this session. Friends, I hope you found this panel discussion interesting, and lunch is served. We'll be back here at 2.
Just hold on. I would ask the panelists to hold on for a while I call the gift getter for them, Gaurav Suri. But I couldn't help, is Gaurav Suri here? I couldn't help being provoked by this very exciting discussion. And when you step back from this discussion, this idea of financial education, financial literacy, consumer, etc., what's happening is that is a question that is going unanswered, and I lay it all for you, particularly for Sandeep, because you'll be financing the whole thing. Are we, by spending on investor education or financial literacy, putting the burden of product purchase on the consumer while actually continuing to sell toxic products, continuing to sell wrong products to them. So this is a question that I would like to leave the panel with. Gaurav Suri, please.